Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another dilemma. I'm Emma
And I'm Brian
Burns.
Burns.
And today we are just going to be talking a little bit about just new technology that's come out, how we leverage it, why it's important to leverage it, um, especially in the world of sales. There's always new innovations and tools to use. So, yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that. The way this conversation kind of came up is we were just talking about how it's kind of like a pendulum in sales. When things go in and out and new ways to reach people, it's like during COVID, it was really hard to get them on the phone, but they were answering emails all day long because they were at home, or they were willing to go to more virtual events versus in-person events, obviously. Whereas now I feel like people are excited about getting out of the house and ready to. And so we were just talking a little bit about how we are now reaching out to them or connecting with people now that the world of work has changed.
Yeah, it has.
It definitely has. So I kind of had 3 points I wanted to touch on. The first being the way we prospect, the second being the tools we use to prospect, and third, the importance of adopting new tools and new ways of prospecting. So understanding where we're going as a sales organization or as people in sales.
Okay.
So the first one being the way we prospect.
The way we prospect. So, I think that there's really no getting away from certain best practices,
Yeah.
right? Like there's the age old method of just picking up the phone and making some calls.
Right.
And I have found I found that it was much harder during and after COVID because so many people started working from home,
Mm-hmm.
and the phone number that you had for them was their office,
Yeah.
and there was no voicemail for them
Yeah.
because they weren't working there anymore. They weren't working from there anymore.
Yeah.
So we had to start finding cell phone numbers and trying to be better with that and making sure that we had those. But more and more people now are actually more comfortable taking a call from their cell phone,
Mm-hmm. And
and
I
that
think what's cool too is we have tools like Zoom Info, which
yes,
allow us to get direct numbers. Whereas maybe a few years ago, you were just constantly reaching the gatekeepers and you were trying to find messaging that would hopefully get you past them in order to talk to the person you wanted to. Um, but that's kind of why I also put tools we use to prospect, not
yeah,
steering away from the conversation of how we now prospect, but just kind of adding to it in the world of
yeah.
innovation.
So for many years, it was pretty much Salesforce is what I used,
Yeah.
um, and Salesforce allowed you to keep track of the calls that you made and keep a database of all the people that you're calling, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a great tool
Yeah.
for sales, and then also your opportunities once you got an appointment and all of that. Um, but there's another tool that I've recently learned how to use called Outreach.
Yep.
Um, I knew of it. I knew people that used it in the past, but I got the opportunity to use it myself recently,
Mm-hmm.
and had the benefit of a coworker that was kind enough to spend some significant time with me, showing me how to use it and how to leverage it to its full capacity.
Yeah.
And I found it makes me much more efficient because of the way that you can create templates. Companies aren't allowed to do mass emails anymore. We used to do that in Salesforce, and it's
Yeah. Due to legal issues,
it's become a legal challenge
yeah,
because what'll happen is that
it'll
uh,
get sent to someone who opts out, and then they can potentially sue you.
well, there's that, but also um, what I'm hearing is that you can get blocked by an entire like by the entire company.
Mm.
So then anything that's coming from the company you're working for to them gets completely blocked, and so all your emails, all that stuff won't go through because they've done that. So you don't want to do mass emails anymore. So the way that outreach sets it up is that you can do them one at a time.
Right.
I think of it like a semi-automatic versus an automatic weapon. A semi-automatic, you have to pull the trigger every single time.
Mm-hmm.
But with a automatic, you just pull one time and it blasts a whole bunch of shots, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is what this does. It allows you to just do one at a time, but very, very efficiently.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know how the weapon thing came in there, but I thought it was a good analogy.
Yeah, and that's definitely a good tool to use to prospect, and I think that kind of just goes back to like the smiling and dialing. Like that's a tool that's beneficial for the way that we smile and dial. But
Yeah.
I would say that it's kind of interesting. I haven't been in sales for too long, but I've definitely seen a huge shift in at least the ways that we're told to prospect, or the way that I was versus I am prospecting now. I would say probably like a year ago, I was focusing on virtual events. I was focusing on maybe sending more emails and making phone calls. And now I am doing more of in-person events, sending more mailers, or having my reps go out in the field and actually go to organizations and drop mailers off, and picking up the phone a lot more and just trying to have that conversation to build that rapport. Because I've noticed that a lot of companies, when they release RFPs, if you're just getting it at RFP stage, which is request for product, which pretty much means that they're just pulling you into their evaluation after determining what they need.
It could also mean request for a proposal.
Oh, request for a proposal.
Yes.
You're a little bit too late to the game, and you don't want to be the person that's brought into it because they've already had connections. They already know which companies they kind of want to bring in. You want that like personal. You already want to have the first call, and so we're trying to beat them to the punch a little bit and trying to provide. I've also noticed that as much as companies are price based and as heavily as they're price based, they will go with the product that they see the most value in. And so trying to initiate or push value on them early on is really crucial, because you don't want to get to the point when they're only evaluating you based off your price.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. If you're not bringing value, then it's easy to lose, right?
Yeah.
Because someone else can just come in with a better price.
Yeah.
And if you win based on price, then they don't see the value and they can just jump to somebody else pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Or they may get frustrated and just go to the next vendor because they didn't like your implementation or some other reason.
Right. And you actually had a really interesting story I think you should tell for we're still on number one, the way we prospect, but this one was a good one because I will say, in my opinion, a lot of people don't see value in going to trade shows. And you recently had a really good interaction. I think it shows how eager people are to have that like one-on-one, like in-person connection. You don't have to say the name of the company or anything, but just share about your experience and maybe even like a different way of prospecting that you found beneficial and that you'd like to continue doing.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I've had limited success working at trade shows because you're typically sitting behind standing behind a booth and answering questions from people that come by.
Yeah.
But I always try really hard to make the most of it.
Mm-hmm.
And bring people in and talk to them and try to engage people that are walking by and things like that, because I'm already there, might as well make the most of it.
Right.
And the company paid a lot of money to have that booth there, and paid me to be there and so forth. So it only seems right for me to put some effort into it. So I do try to do a little bit more than just stand there and answer questions, you know. So our company was doing this kind of a unique idea where they had a trail mix um, table set up,
Yeah.
and it was different bowls of things like nuts and M&Ms and raisins and stuff, so you could create your own trail mix.
Mm-hmm.
And so you give, they take a little baggie, and they fill it up. But what was unique about it is that for every bag of trail mix somebody made, we were we were donating to an organization that provides meals for children in need. And so I thought that was kind of cool that we were doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going out and beyond the booth, walking out, finding people and saying, "Hey, would you like to save some children today?" And kind of in a joking manner, but in reality, that's kind of what they were doing. They were helping starving children. And so I got some people to come over, and one of them said that they hadn't heard of our company and they hadn't even planned on stopping by.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, come on by and you can save some children and learn about our company at the same time.
Yeah.
And so they did. It turned out they were the VP of a very large organization that we work really well with their type of organization. It's a really great fit for us. And they happened to be looking for some of our solutions at the time.
Yeah.
And they just hadn't considered us. They were already in process. So we showed her a demo. She was impressed. She connected us with the people in her organization that were actually running that project, kind of two separate projects, but one of them, both of them were a good fit for. One of them didn't end up going anywhere. Now they put that one on hold. The other one is progressing forward, and to be determined whether we win the business or not. But the fact that we would not have had this opportunity had I not brought her to the booth.
Yeah. And I think it just goes to show people crave connection and just like finding a way to connect with her, whether it was saving children or
I mean,
or finding interest in her business. Obviously, people work for companies they care about and they feel passionate about. So that's the best way. The best way to get the conversation rolling is just to understand what they do and actually care.
Right. Yeah, and it was a way for me to just create conversation with her. And while she's building her trail mix, I could chat with her a little bit, learn about what they were doing and so
forth. Okay, so that kind of leads us into the tools we use to prospect. Obviously, trade shows, that's a tool in your toolbox. You mentioned outreach is a really good tool.
It really is.
I like using LinkedIn Navigator. I find it extremely helpful for like buyer intent. It'll show you like spiking accounts on there.
Absolutely.
Terminus.
6 Sense.
What did you say?
There's a product called 6 Sense. It does the same kind of thing as Terminus.
Okay. 6 Sense. Consensus or Vidyard videos. I also think partners could be tools.
What was that?
Partners.
Okay.
Which is also kind of the way we prospect is we get in with partners or the warm.
Tell me more about that.
Well, maybe we could do a separate episode on that one.
Okay.
Like the world of partners, because I think there's in some organizations there's a big emphasis on them because it's kind of like a warm introduction into an opportunity. You already have someone that's made that connection and they're bringing you into the opportunity. It doesn't feel so like, I don't know. It's like you have a house party you're going to. They already have a friend that's opening up the door versus you just knocking and being like, hey, nice to meet you.
Well, they're introducing you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, yeah, we'll maybe do a separate episode on that one, but I think that one's a good way of a good tool to use to prospect
Yes.
is leveraging partners. Any other tools you can think of? The only other one I can think of is Bamboo or Sprout Social. I know there's a lot out there. Maybe we could talk a little bit about. There are so many tools out there. How do you focus on just a few to like really hone in on your craft?
Yeah, one you forgot is sales or LinkedIn.
Well, I said LinkedIn Navigator.
Okay. Man, I've got my throat.
Yeah, LinkedIn Navigator. I love connecting with people on there and then reaching out to them, thanking them for connecting.
And just straight LinkedIn as well. I've been having success sending an in-mail to them and a connect request. And I, then follow that up with email, phone call, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Incorporated into my process. And many times people will respond to an in-mail before they'll respond to an email or a voicemail.
It's just like texting. Like I'm much more likely to respond to a text versus think about an email. Because that's just the way my brain works. I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm good with that or whatever. Versus an email, I'm like, this is intimidating. Like I have to reply all to this email, think about it, and send it. That's just the way I think my generation thinks. It's a lot more straightforward, which can also be a tool to prospect is leveraging their direct phone number to send them messages. But I think that is still pending whether we're.
I have found that to be more useful after you've made a contact with that person.
Yeah. If
you've already had some sort of communication, then it doesn't feel as awkward to send them a text message. I apologize for my voice; it's a little off today. But once you've had connection with them, then sending a text message seems a little more natural, and then it's a great way to kind of, if you run into that scenario where things kind of slow down in the process, you can text them and try to re-engage them.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see if that's where sales goes. I know a lot of organizations already do this, but it's a lot more of like, I don't know. I get text messages from my favorite brands saying, oh, there's a sale today, or, oh, we saw you looking at this item on our website, and I'll be interested to see if that's the way we start selling, is like kind of through, they start automating sending text messages to people, like if they opt in and being like, hey, we have this upcoming event, we'd love for you to attend. Reply yes if you'd be interested in coming. That would be so much more simple in my opinion, but we'll see if that's the thing. That might be a little bit too personal, but okay. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about point 3, which is the importance of adopting new tools and new ways of prospecting, understanding where we're going. So, one example is we just received new versions of Teams, new versions of Outlook. We just initiated Gong. We have new versions of Salesforce. So it's like there's so many things are constantly changing, and the importance of adopting those new tools, because you don't want to be a step behind everyone else. You don't want to still be using outdated tools to market to people because everyone else is using the new ones.
It might be ahead of you, yeah. Yeah, but a couple things to say about that, if I can clear my voice. So number one is it can be a lot. I know when I came to work at this most recent job, they they gave me a Mac, which I have never used for business purposes. I've used it on personal, but not for business. So there was an adjustment period for that alone, because things are kind of a little different. Like even to close out a browser is on the opposite side than it is on a regular computer. So your brain is trying to remember, those little nuances. And then they use all Google products.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of using Excel, they're using Sheets, and instead
Oh,
of
Google Sheets
PowerPoint,
is very difficult to use too.
it's slides
Yeah,
and
that would be a hard
docs instead of
transition.
Word.
When
And
you
so
use a thing called Slack instead of, do you use Teams too, or Slack your Teams?
we use Slack, which I've used Teams in the past.
Yeah,
So I was learning a lot of new basic tools
that's a
that,
lot of new tools.
well,
Even for
yeah.
me, that would be a very hard transition, and I'm new to the.
And I've been using a PC, laptop, whatever, from, with all Microsoft products for the last 30 plus years.
Yeah.
So then to transition to this, not a major jump because a lot of the stuff is the same, right?
Right.
But little things that you just are used to in a certain, being in a certain
Capacity,
place. Yeah. So I was learning all of that, plus these new tools like Gong.
Mm-hmm.
We use Gong, which is amazing. But until you get used, you got to learn it.
Yeah, you do, because there's certain measurements, like they have to, opt into being recorded or videoed or whatever. And there's just like little things about it. I know because I set up first calls for my AEs, I'm not the one taking the call. So it's a little bit challenging at first to understand, okay, how do I add them to the call, but then also allow them to lead the call instead of me being like the one to open it up and start the meeting. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of nuances, and just like things are always changing. I would say, at least for me, it helps to just learn one tool at a time. I'm a very like, I have to have like steps, and I have to see things visually and then do them in order to implement them. So I like to go about like that with each tool. Like I want to learn about it, want to watch someone do it, and then I want to do it. And that helps me be very
I'm very
efficient at it.
process oriented.
Yeah.
So I had all these new things, and then outreach on top of that, and I already knew Salesforce. That was the one thing I already was familiar with. But we were no longer we don't do our forecasting in Salesforce. We do it in Gong, which was new to me. So a lot of new stuff. And so what I'd say about that, there's a book. So there's perspective of the employee, right?
Yep.
But then there's also perspective of the leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And from a leadership, I've been in management before, and from a leadership perspective, one of the best leadership books I've read is called Leadership in the 1 Minute Manager.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about this concept of situational leadership. And that's where you focus on, like, let's take you and me, for example. You're younger, you pick up on tools a lot faster than I do. It takes me a little bit longer to learn something new with technology. You're just more, you were born with it. It's just how things have always been. I wasn't. So it's just takes me a little bit longer. And maybe there's a tool that you're already familiar with. And so let's say we work for the same company and they roll it out to both of us, the same tool.
Right.
You've used it before, you've used similar technology before, you pick it up quickly. I may not.
Right.
It might take me a little bit longer. So as a leader, they might look at me and go, oh, well, he's been doing this for 30 years. She's only been doing it for a couple of years. He should have it down. What's taking him so long? Why is she faster than him? He's got more experience.
Mm-hmm.
The way the situational leadership looks at each situation, right? And with Salesforce, I'm going to be more experienced than you. I can run reports in there. I can do things because I've used it for many years.
Right.
But something new, you might pick it up faster. I might need to be managed like a newbie, like a rookie, like somebody hasn't ever used this thing before. Right.
So
it's kind of interesting to think about it from that perspective.
Right.
Like as companies roll out these new things, you got to think about everybody and not just assume that the senior people will be experienced in using all of that stuff.
Yeah. No, that's definitely true. I do think that a lot of senior people I work with, because they're used to so many rollouts. They're the first people to be like, how do I use this? What do I do? Show me a video. And they're a lot more, they implement way faster than even some of the younger ones, because the younger ones are just like, oh, whatever, like it's another thing we have to learn about, and they're a lot slower to like initiate. So I do agree with that, but I also do think like when you do show them, they implement, and like they're done. Yeah. But I think I really liked that. What was the book called again? The 1 minute
Leadership and the 1 Minute Manager.
Leadership and the 1 Minute Manager.
Ken Blanchard is the author.
Well, there you guys go. There's a book for your day. We will wrap today's Daily Dilemma up, and we look forward to doing one. We're going to try and do one once a month.
Yep.
So, yeah. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.